And welcome to the studio. You are listening to Triple H 100.1 FM. My name is Alexi Boyd and we are here with Small Biz Matters for another week of fantastic small business education. Thank you for joining me. Those of you who are new to the show, this is a show all about small business learning, listening to experts, listening to politicians, being an advocate for small business, but importantly, working inside your business rather than on it. Or is it the other way around? I always get this mixed up. My regular listeners will know that I regularly talk about that in two different ways. But today, we are going to talk about tech products and how to implement them in your business. And I guess when we start afresh with a new financial year, or we think about beginning anew and crossing off the line from one P&L to another, it's a good time to start looking at the latest tech products and how you can implement them. But it's very tempting and very easy to get distracted by the shiny new thing that's on the side of your desk that you've just bought, gadgets that help you be more efficient or more productive, and you've read about them somewhere in a long-lost article and you go, right, now's the time to buy a new thing and I'm going to get it all implemented. It's not that easy. Sometimes they're not the best fit. Sometimes you haven't thought things through properly. And don't forget about the time it takes you to implement change in your own processes and procedures. And often it's one of those aspects as small businesses that we don't quantify in our balance sheet. But you need to consider it because, of course, your time is very important and very valuable. So today we have a fantastic expert who lives and breathes these products on a daily basis. He has got many, many years, in fact, decades of experience in the industry, and he can help us to navigate the myriad of options that are out there, the good, the bad and the ugly. Help us small businesses to find the best fit. Carl Robertson from Rocketbook Australia is a technology professional with over 10 years experience in telecommunications and consumer electronics across product development, sales and marketing. Welcome to the program, Carl.
Thanks, Alexi. Thanks for having me in.
Listen, so we met a couple of weeks ago and I was pretty blown away by your product, and we're not going to talk about that too much because we'll get into trouble. But I do enjoy a new tech product. I think we all do. We enjoy having something shiny and new. iPhones are a good example, where we have something coming into our door or something we've come across and we just go, oh, that's fabulous. We might have seen it at an expo or a conference or something like that. Is it really easy to get, I guess, distracted by the newness of something without really thinking about the implementation fully?
Absolutely, I think so. I think with these fantastic new products has come fantastic new marketing campaigns.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can certainly get caught up in the glitz and glamour of marketing campaigns. But, the innovation we've seen over the last 10 years has just been amazing and will no doubt continue. And offer us as business owners fantastic products.
And Australians are supposedly the biggest adopters of technology and the fastest adopters of new cloud-based technology, for example. Is that the reality that you see every day? Are people open and encouraging of taking these things on board?
Absolutely. As you mentioned earlier, I mean, you can literally test the waters so easily these days. A lot of the new software available, for example, is try before you buy, and absolutely, it's a lot easier to try things out, see if they work for you, and then you can implement them in your business.
So today we're going to talk about some specific products, but we're also going to talk about the implementation of something like software as well. And these are your top 5. So thank you very much for doing all this research for us. So let's talk about, I guess, the mobile phone. Been with us for a while now. It's the obvious start. It's with us wherever we go. It's attached to us like some sort of new appendage. Why do you think that's been such a monumental change to the way that we do business specifically?
Well, I think firstly we all have one. It's probably a fair comment. I think we're at about probably 21 million mobile devices for a population of 25 million people. So
only the babies.
Not many 2-year-olds are probably, although to be honest, I know I can speak for myself that I know my son quite enjoys digital devices, but I think it's the communication piece and what it enables is us to be connected no matter where we are. And I think it's probably, whilst it's one of the products that's revolutionised the way we do business, it's probably also one of the most misunderstood products in that, as I said earlier, we have these ideas of fantastic products put into our heads by these huge businesses that have massive marketing budgets. And we're seeing things like buzzwords like 5G, for example, coming in. And realistically, they're probably not necessarily that important to our business at the moment in terms of that new technology. But there are other solutions out there that we can implement quite easily into the business that might be a better fit.
So the 5G, okay, so you're going to need to explain this to me, plain speak.
Yes.
So the 5G, is that the NBN? essentially?
Slightly different. So essentially, it's like the NBN in that what it offers is faster speeds when you're using the internet. But what it is essentially new networks being rolled out by the major telcos. So Telstra will be the first one to roll it out. And then we'll see the others follow as well. But what it is essentially new technology. We went from 2G to 3G to 4G. 5G is the logical next step. In 15 years, we'll probably be talking about 6G, for example. But what it means is it's faster speeds. So whereas you're currently probably getting around 1.2 gig at the moment on 5G per second. You could be getting anywhere from 20 to 50 megabytes per second on 3G.
So it's just faster.
Significantly quicker.
Wow.
Yep.
And are all the devices that we have currently in our pockets, in our hands, are they going to be able to hop on immediately to the 5G network?
So they won't be able to connect to 5G. At the moment, there's about 3 devices that are currently 5G devices, but we'll see more come on over the next few years. But they'll continue with 4G, and 4G will be around for years to come.
So. Oh, look, I can hear a lot of us sitting here going, look, 4G's fine. I'm able to work. I mean, I'm thinking if it's going to be faster, I'm just going to be more busy. I'm just going to be working more. Is that squishing more into each minute?
Absolutely. For many of us, 4G is fine. And that's the thing. At the moment, 5G is being rolled out in a couple of capital cities and a couple of selected other cities as well. So we're not seeing 5G at the moment in regional areas, for example. And as you say, 4G for many of us does the job.
Yeah, and it's because, so the whole 4G, 5G network thing, that's when you're out and about and you're roaming and you've got your device or even your, I guess your computer. Would that be working off some sort of 5G network because it's mobile and it's outdoors?
You will see 5G computers, no doubt, in the next few years, yes.
And the NBN is what we're using while we're internal in our homes or in our businesses?
Correct. Yeah,
right.
That's a good way to look at it.
Excellent. Yeah. So it sounds to me like, in a lot of ways, if we're talking about devices, that there's got to be more purchasing of the newest devices in order to have this aspirational, speed and network connectivity. You need to be able to have these new devices to be able to connect to that. Am I right in saying that?
To connect to 5G, yeah, absolutely. You'd need to buy new devices if you want to do that. But as you say, for many of us, 4G is acceptable at the moment, and we can use either devices that we currently have, or there's devices that are easy to enter the market that currently use 4G that, as I say, will do the job for you. Yeah.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, Google phones.
Yes.
What the? Like, I'm one of those people that's completely wedded to my device across the board. So where does Google sit in the market? Is it literally just another hard set, another hard piece of hard technology?
So there's the easiest way to say this is there's 2 main operating systems, that being iOS, which is your Apple operating system, and then Android, which is Google owned and is an open source software. So the major difference being Android, as I say, is open source, so you will see all different brands from Samsung, Cat, Oppo, all these different brands using Android. Versus versus iOS, which you will only see Apple using. So
it's those platforms that we think of.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And sort of, I guess the Samsungs have just decided to connect themselves to Android as a operating system.
Yeah, and the reason for that is, Google are quite a large company, and
I hear that. No longer categorised as a small business.
Absolutely. So obviously there's huge amounts of development work that go into operating systems. It's a proven stable solution now. So it's gone through many iterations and it will continue. Whereas if Samsung were to develop their own operating system, it's expensive to maintain.
Right.
It's an open source platform.
Yeah.
That's easier for everyone to use.
So am I right in assuming that these days, now that, as you said, all of that technology's gone through all the testing and got to a point where it's usable and it's stable,
yes,
that there's no disadvantage to my business if I use iOS, being Apple, or the Google Android system in terms of a platform? It doesn't matter. It's just all about the usability of my hardware. Is that correct?
It's really down to personal preference. I think that's the easiest way to say it. You meet a lot of people that love Apple and will say, I only like Apple products. However, you're locked into that ecosystem. If the perfect example is a tradesman, for example, if you don't see a tradesman rocking out with a sports car and his tools hanging out the side, he's got a specifically built device for his job. The same goes for Android devices, for example. Because you've got a range of brands, you can find many different devices that can meet your needs, whereas with Apple, you were locked very much to what the latest iPhone is. So that's probably one of the unique things that being on the Android platform is it gives you multiple brands, so therefore it gives you multiple different types of products that you can choose
And it's kind
from.
of like what we're talking about today is the whole, it doesn't matter what device it is or tech product or software, you need to consider the implementation of that and the time and the research that goes into making sure that it's right for your business.
Absolutely, because if you look at Apple, for example, their devices, so if you're using a Mac along with an iPhone, they talk to one another. So that can be great for someone that's using them on a day-to-day basis. Whereas if you're out and about using them on a job site, for example, you probably want a rugged phone that's going to withstand being dropped and smashing screen. And, for example, the Cat phones, they warrant the screen. So that's 24 months whereby you can repair or replace your device. So everyone is obviously in a different position, and you need to look at what device matches your requirements. And I think that's probably one of the problems that we've seen is that we've got these fantastic marketing campaigns, people are queuing out the door to buy a device, but it may not necessarily be the right device for what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so do some research, find out someone who's in a similar position to you has a similar business, similar requirements. Talk to your professional association, even something as simple as what phone do I get? If you're starting to implement something new, then you should really do your research first, which is what today's all about. Let's talk about something much more exciting, which is asset tracking and the Internet of Things. This, to me, is something that's going to make, rather than a complete distraction, is just going to make our lives much more efficient. Can you describe to me how it works and how it can help small business?
Absolutely. So the Internet of Things, as an overarching comment, is anything that's connected to the Internet. And at the moment, obviously, we look at things like our computer, our mobile phone, and our TV, for example. But as things go on, we're starting to see our kettle, our fridge, our garage door opener, all these different things, a front door, for example, that are becoming connected. And that's great in that we can open them using a smartphone or whatever it may be. But what we're going to see over the next few years is these talking to one another. And we've started to see this with the introduction of Siri, for example, and the ability to control devices via our voice. Mm-hmm. But what's going to happen is these devices are going to talk to one another, and when you're coming home from work, for example, your car is going to talk to your garage door opener and say, I'm approaching. It's going to be able to open your front door as you approach it. You're going to have the ability for the fridge to order for you instead of having to go online to order. All different things. So it's really about devices talking to one another. And I think it is the most exciting part of where all this connectivity is taking us.
And speaking about assets, of course, if you're a business, then you can also track where things are located as well. So obviously cars, a lot of trades have, well, everyone has cars that are required for business, so you can use the Internet of Things to know where everything is. But there's other assets that are part of your business as well that you can use. Are we talking in terms of security? They become trackable?
Absolutely, yeah. So security is a big piece, and we're in the infancy of asset tracking, I'd suggest, because we're seeing a lot of Bluetooth connected asset trackers, for example, that track your keys or your wallet. But where we're going to see more growth is, again, there's a Internet of Things network being rolled out by many of the operators, and what that uses is a lower power, so it gives them longer. The device draws less power, so it'll give them longer life rather than when they're using 4G, for example. So we're going to see the ability for more and more things to be connected. So whether that be a generator on a site, a piece of machinery, or even down to, as you say, anything that you might have in your office that is high value, you can literally put a tracker on it and you'll know the location of it wherever it may be.
The Internet of Things is very much dependent on electricity, right? So what happens in the event of, I think everybody has heard horror stories about people being locked out of their homes because, the electricity's gone down, the grid's gone down, there's been a fire at a local substation and people literally just can't get in. Is there other technology that's coming in alongside that to help protect us against those sort of issues?
Absolutely. So I think, as you mentioned, a lot of the tracking devices do require power. or they all require power, but they require electricity. However, as I said, with the IoT networks that have been rolled out, they're lower power. So we're actually seeing batteries that can last 1 to 2 years, for example, because battery technology is obviously improving, and the ability to get more out of a lithium-ion battery that are reducing in size constantly. So I think we'll see the growth of battery power, and obviously solar's being improved as well.
That's
there's
right.
no reason that we couldn't look at that as
well. We
as a
were there
means
20 years ago, but we seem to have fallen behind the 8 ball with that one a little bit. I mean, a great example for that is a product like Tile. That's a very clear asset tracking for your keys, for your wallet, for your phone, anything you want to stick it to. Then you can actually track it. Like through geo-tracking, can't you?
Correct, yeah. So you can track it from your device, and I love Tile. I have Tiles myself, and I think one of the great things I use them for is when I travel, I stick a Tile inside my cabin bag when I check it, and I know firstly that it's on the plane.
What's it doing in Adelaide?
And then I know when it's arriving as well. So
wow, really? Of course, you can see when it's getting closer to you.
Because when it comes into range. So
you can go to the bathroom without worrying about your little your thing going around the carousel.
Yes.
Oh, well, that's a great little product, actually. Yeah, no, I'm a fan of those as well. And there's other options out there apart from Tile, of course. So let's talk as well about not so much physical physical changes and physical implementation of tech, but of course software. That's a huge issue for business, because I think we're all getting to that stage in small business. We're becoming quite overwhelmed with the options that are out there. It's almost though you have to set a day aside just to even work out which piece of software to implement for, say, your accounting system, for example, if you're going to make a big change. And I think at this time of year, we're all thinking about what sort of changes we can make. So what are sort of some of your big tips when it comes to software and making the decision about which one to choose, for example?
Well, the beauty about software is long gone are the days of having to go to a retail store and buying a disc with software on it. Those
stupid big cardboard boxes that had like one CD in them.
Exactly. So we're now in a fantastic position whereby online there is just so much software available, and as you say, that can be quite overwhelming. But obviously, this is the major accounting software, which is probably the flagship things that as business owners that we hear of regularly.
Big marketing campaigns, like you said.
Absolutely, and there's a reason for that. They're making a lot of money because they are popular and they're fantastic. I've got to say, they revolutionise the way that we do business, and it's saving us time, which, as business owners, time is money. We know that. Look, one of the great examples I like to talk about is Canva. And I think they're a fantastic Australian story, and I think they're only going to continue to grow and grow. Recently valued at $1 billion with some VC money being piled in. But
what's VC?
Venture capital money.
Right. Yes.
So it's a drag and drop graphic design tool, and it's free to use. And I think it's one of the great tools that we can use as business owners, small business owners, to create content. And so you can combine that with something like Pexels or Pixabay to use royalty-free images.
As long as you're using images that are royalty-free and it's permitted. Don't just cut and paste from Google from anywhere.
Or your own images.
Yes, indeed. And be creative, people.
Exactly, and you can use it for zero cost. You can create fantastic digital assets for your website, for social media, or even flyers, vouchers, or print ads. So I think Canva's fantastic, and once obviously you get some customers in the door with the like of Canva, you can then use products like Design Modo to design an e-newsletter and then send it out via MailChimp. And you can do all of that without spending any money. Indeed.
And it's a good option out there for those of you who are just starting out, for sure. We're going to take a quick break here on Small Biz Matters, and when we come back after the break, we're going to talk to Carl a little bit more about our last two products and then the all-important implementation of all these products in your business. You're listening to Small Biz Matters with Alexi Boyd. We'll be back after this. So today we're talking all about tech products and implementation of those things. And just before the break, we were talking about things, quite literally, the Internet of Things, and how devices are all starting to talk to one another. Not only does that, slightly creepy if you think about it that way, but more importantly, it makes our lives more efficient, it makes us more energy efficient, it makes us more, I guess, we don't have to think about clunky stuff like, opening doors or turning on lights or making sure our home is heated efficiently. It's all happening for us while we move around the joint, which is a way that, I guess, for us as businesses, things get a little bit easier as well. But we have to consider the implementation of this stuff, not so much with the Internet of Things, but say new devices and new products. And there are some absolutely fantastic products out there, apart from our phones, which it's very easy to get distracted by. But let's talk about accepting payments, Carl. So, Carl, it's really important that you get more efficient with this. Why? Why do we have to get better at taking money from our clients when we've done the work?
Cash flow.
Yeah, the big C word.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's, obviously we all like money in our pocket, and with there's some fantastic products out there now that mean that you can get paid instantly rather than the old checks in the mail being an adage and having to wait with terms. So, there's, for example, the PayPal here.
That's a little device. You can buy it at some retailers now, can't you?
Correct. You can buy it from most electronics retailers. And so PayPal here and Square is the other one that are the two common ones.
And they take credit cards. So they take credit cards,
correct. Yeah. So what they do is they utilise your phone, so whether that be an Android device or an iOS device, they connect to an app. And then literally you can use that to take payments on the spot. So it means you're getting paid instantly. So it's it's very low cost. So you're looking at the initial outlay is between $50 and $100 to buy the actual device. And then you're looking at commission rates between kind of 1.9% to 2.5%. So my personal thought is the Square's probably the best option in that it's got a lower commission rate than the here. But they're fantastic because, as I say, you get paid instantly. So if you're a service business or you sell products, you can literally do it from anywhere now.
And gone are the days where you even have to carry around, never mind the stripey. Those of you who are our age will remember the swipes where you literally put a credit card in and that great big piece of carbon paper. Those things are almost antiques now. But even gone are the days where you've got those handheld EFTPOS machines. They're defunct as well. I mean, they're pretty much gone by the dodo.
Absolutely. So these readers are literally the size of less than the size of your hand, basically. So they're really small, they're portable, and you're providing a tax invoice on the spot as well. So the customer's happy, they're getting their goods or services instantly, but then you're providing that tax invoice. So it's obviously, and then the money is paid within a couple of days. So
I would make sure when you're setting these things up in the back end, if you're invoicing or sending out invoices and receipts from those products, make sure that they're all set out like a proper tax invoice and meeting your ATO obligations. That's just me putting my bookkeeper's hat on there for a second. And don't forget about the device-free options. So there's things like Go Cardless and there's Stripe and other options where they're very price effective as well because they have very low fees, and it's kind of like a race to the bottom, isn't it, with all these companies taking less and less of a chunk out of your invoice, but making their money through volume. And really, any business who's out there, any business who's not taking payments immediately, you're shooting yourself in the foot, and that raises a big question about what the big boys are doing when they're taking advantage of small business. I was reading in the Zero Insights release that there's $55 billion, I did say that correctly, $1 billion worth of money that it's not going, that's being paid late to small businesses just in Australia alone, which is outrageous.
Absolutely. And many of us are small businesses, and so you wear many hats. And no one likes wearing the accounts receivable hat.
Yeah,
so,
nobody.
If you receive that payment immediately, that's something you don't have to worry about.
Not even a stress. Let's talk about some other devices you can have around the place. So note-taking solutions, of course. Now, these are very exciting, I have to say. There are devices out there that you can now... actually, Carl, you're the expert. You talk about it. What am I talking about? They're awesome anyway.
Yeah, so there are many note-taking solutions, and tablets being introduced as obviously presented digital solutions. So you see the iPad, Microsoft Surface, for example, that are great solutions. But many of us love going back to the good old pen and paper, and it's an oldie bit of goldie, and obviously Rocketbook is a product that we've got available here in Australia. And what's unique about Rocketbook is what we say is it bridges the gap between pen and paper and the cloud. So you take your notes as you would a normal notebook, you scan them to the cloud using the free to download app, and then you can essentially reuse the book. So with the Wave, you stick it in a microwave with a mug of water. cook the book and it clears. Or with the Everlast, you literally wipe the individual pages clear, and then you can reuse the book over and over again with your notes saved in the cloud, obviously.
And this to me is a real, I guess, these sort of products are a marriage of product technology, so actually like tangible things, and the software, because they're using both of those in tandem with one another to make things more efficient. And it's interesting what you were saying about people wanting to go back to pen and paper, because there is actual data that shows that we are more likely to remember things that we've written down in our own handwriting, and more likely to remember things in terms of using different colours as well. And I guess products like this offer that opportunity to utilise both of those skills and tap into that memory bank that we also desperately need to hang on to, in a way that surfaces and digital products can't do it alone.
Correct. So scientists call it mindless transcription, whereby the idea being that when you're taking notes onto a computer, they're literally coming in and going straight into the computer and nothing sinking into your brain. And it's studies have shown that you retain more if you're handwriting the notes. Plus, when you're sitting in a meeting opposite someone handwriting notes, I think they see you as being more in the moment versus someone that's on a computer. Are they sending emails? Are they browsing the web? I think it's a bit more personal, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, actually, sort of that look of being professional and also taking the time to, put something down and write something down. And yeah, it is. It's kind of old-fashioned, but it's interesting that it's like books. People have all gone back to reading books again because they miss the tangibility of holding something, a hard copy of something in your hands, and that feeling of, having it with you. But the risk of having notepaper is that you can lose it, and the terrifying thought of all those notes disappearing. And I guess that's what these sort of products do, is they still hold a digital copy somewhere, and there's that safety mechanism, safety net.
Correct. So you've got the digital copy, and plus it's good for the environment. You're not going through notebooks hand over fist. You can actually reuse it again and again. Let's
talk about the good old-fashioned whiteboard. Here's another product that we used probably, I'm thinking back in the 80s and the 90s, and there's a whiteboard sitting up on the wall, and you have a meeting and everybody has a whip, and you sit there and you write all the notes up on the board, and then, 10 years ago someone took a photo of it to at least try and commit it to memory. But these days you can actually grab the entire what's on the board in its entirety, and it becomes another digital form, and you can pop it into different storage mechanisms and that sort of thing.
Correct. So a perfect example is a product called ThinkBoard. So Rocketbook partnered with a product called ThinkBoard to develop a whiteboard that you can apply to any surface. And then just like the Rocketbook app where you scan it and send it to the location, you can literally do that when you're finished as well. So again, you're saving the notes, because how many brainstorming sessions ended with someone forgetting to take photos or taking photos and not sharing them, whereas with this you can send them to a shared folder or whatever it may be. So ThinkBoard's great. We also have other products that aren't necessarily connected, but you can apply on any surface. So if you're a startup that's leasing space, then you can apply that on the wall, and then when you finish, take it off.
So the technology's got to the point now where you can literally unfurl it, stick it up on somewhere, and then it stays there until you're ready to take it down again, which is, for those people who are out there who are using shared office spaces and co-working spaces and those sort of things, that's a really good option for everybody.
Absolutely.
So things are, it seems to me like we're finding a balance. I thought we'd be talking about literally little gadgets and things, but the reality is that gadgets are becoming more, integrated with software, so that they're not as tangible as they used to be. They're not something that used to hand. We're not talking about sticky notes or different types of pens that you can use. It's more that it's in marriage and with software as well to make it more efficient, and that's where the efficiency lies. Is that where you think things are heading?
Absolutely. I think, as I mentioned earlier, with all these new businesses that are coming up, it's a lot easier to bring product to market, and we've got these fantastic things that we all carry around in our pockets that have these huge processing power. So rather than develop new versions of those, we're developing products via software that can connect to those.
Exactly, because as we know with the phones, very good example of something that becomes defunct quickly because the technology of the hardware is out of date, and we're trying to, avoid that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the beauty of phones is that, as I say, they are mini computers in your pocket. You're now getting 2 to 3 years. So we've seen the average time that people hold on to their phone increase from 24 months closer to 36 months. And I think part of that is also the innovation of phones has also slowed down. So with the advent of the iPhone, for example, that revolutionised the smartphone market, and we had quite a high rate of innovation coming to mobile phones. It's probably slowed a little bit, and we're now seeing innovation around edge-to-edge screens, which probably isn't quite the step forward that we saw a couple of years ago.
It's not that amazing, really. I mean, if that's the best you can do. Exactly. If that's the best you can do with hardware, not that particularly interested. I'm more interested in the software that's behind it that makes it more powerful, the 5G that makes it faster, all that sort of stuff.
And as business owners, I think that's the stuff that excites us.
Yeah, that's right. So let's talk about implementation, because towards the beginning of the program you were mentioning, how do you try things without buying it? Yes, a lot of software and software offers you a sort of a 1 month free trial, for example. What's other ways that you can research a product to make sure the time you're implementing it is really efficient?
So I think you mentioned earlier networking. Obviously, networking is a great place to start in that you can speak to people that are maybe in your industry and have experience with products, and you can gauge feedback from them as to whether it worked or not. I think that's a really good place to start because people will mostly be honest with you as to whether they've had success or a product hasn't worked for them. I think testimonials from websites...
Aren't they a bit... I don't know. People can buy testimonials these days. I'm becoming much more dubious and non-believing with those. It's almost like the genuine connections are better.
Absolutely. So I think, take them with a grain of salt. So I think, obviously you need to look at it and decipher whether they're accurate or, as you say, whether they have been purchased. But then you've got reliable websites like Choice, I think, and there are other sites out there like CanStar, Facebook reviews. You may not necessarily see truthful ones being positive, but you may see some negative ones that are saying steer clear of this product. And, again, you need to look at what's being said there and take that in your stride. So, I'd recommend websites and research. Another
place I like to look for things is if you've got an industry-specific Facebook group that you're part of, put it out there to those professionals and ask them if they've happened to use a particular product or a particular part of a product or, a chunk of one piece of software, for example. That's a really good place to start too, because they'll give very honest opinions to you because they're talking to you as a person, not just to a forum page.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, as I say, you certainly, from peers, you should be getting some truthful information, yeah.
And do you think gone are the days, I remember it used to be whenever you had an iPhone, for example, you go, oh no, don't upgrade to the latest operating system, give it a couple of months so that they can work out the teething issues. Is that getting better in your opinion?
I think it's getting better, but it's still there. We still see bugs in software. So rather than queuing at the front door on the launch day, you may want to just give it a couple of weeks or a month and see how the market reacts. We saw some devices that had some issues with their battery catching on fire. Obviously that would have been an issue for the people that had that. So I think, it sometimes makes sense just to hold off a little bit and see how it goes.
Yeah, and again, talk to people who have had the negative experiences, because then it might avoid you having to spend lots of time with having those type of things. So let's talk about the do's and the don'ts of implementing something in your product. You mentioned that, embracing technology. We are big adopters in Australia, but do you think there's a certain part of us that still is dubious about new technology because it might waste our time, for example?
Yeah, I think there's certainly probably some concern about introducing technology, but it is important that we embrace it. It's artificial intelligence is making repetitive tasks a lot easier, and it's things like that.
See, I'm not a fan.
You're not?
No, I'm not a fan of AI. I just don't think it's clever enough. So I don't actually, in my everyday working life, I don't switch it on until I'm 1,000,000% sure that it's going to do as good a job as I am. And maybe that's a fear factor, but I imagine for a lot of consultants out there who consider themselves the expert in their field, the people who are advice givers would look at AI as a way, not so much as competition, but as really quite... nowhere near as good as they are in terms of giving advice.
Absolutely. I agree that AI will always struggle to be better than the human brain. But I think it does make a lot of repetitive tasks easier. I think using it to the right degree makes a lot of sense. AI is down to products whereby you scan a receipt and it automatically loads it in. That's the kind of AI that's going to help the way you work.
And getting rid of, really cumbersome everyday.
Yeah, so I think
basic products, basic processes, I should
correct.
say.
So I think AI is going to help us in the long run. I don't think we'll be fighting the machines just yet.
What about price point when you're making decisions about software? I mean, or anything, what's your decision? What would be your advice on that? So
I think, we sometimes probably have the wool pulled over our eyes with the most expensive thing is the best thing. And I think that just comes back to research. So, buy the right product for you at the right price for you as well. One of the concerns with price point, though, is if you buy that cheapest thing, it's probably going to end up costing you the most time and therefore the most money. So not necessarily always the case, but it comes with research.
Again, talk to people that you know and find out what products are best. We're going to take another quick break here on Small Biz Matters, and when we come back after the break, we'll talk a little bit about technology and how it can be not so positive in your business. You're listening to Small Biz Matters. We'll be back after this. And welcome back to Triple H 100.1 FM here live in the studio and across the community radio network. You're listening to Small Biz Matters with Alexi Boyd. We've got Carl Robertson here from Rocket Books Australia talking all about devices, implementation, shiny new gadgets to make you feel like you're being more efficient, but you have to do your research and take the time to make sure you're implementing it properly. Just before the break, we were talking about different ways that you can implement the technology, where to seek advice, and there's a couple of really great websites that you can recommend, Carl, that independently, apart from talking to other people in your industry, you might want to go to find out more. What are some of those websites?
So I think Choice is probably the oldie but a goldie. There's a reason that they are independent, and I think that their reviews are often on the money with what they come back
and
with.
They're also like a consumer advocate as well. I mean,
Correct.
They really support consumers in their decision-making process and therefore helping us spend our dollars a bit better.
Correct, and not just in technology, obviously. So they, I think they do a great job. Yeah, absolutely. So Choice is one I'd recommend. I think CanStar's quite good. And another one is Trevor Long has a website called EFTM, and that's a tech website. He does a lot of reviews of technology products, and again, I think he's very open in terms of his commercial interests, and I think that's important as well. And then you can look at things like YouTube, Facebook. Again, I think you often get reviewers looking at products. Take it with a grain of salt, but there's often some great insights there.
Is Whirlpool still going?
Whirlpool, I believe it exists. Yeah,
it's the biggest forum in the world.
Exactly. I think it's probably half the internet by now. Yeah,
yeah, because that's a really great place to find. Although that tends to be quite American based as well, so we need to make sure that we're finding things that are sort of more Australian centric. Because when you consider, I guess, legislation compliance that we have to adhere to within small business, you need to make sure that software and that hardware is also adhering to that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you Google anything you're looking at with reviews, you're going to find it. And Google reviews, for example, again, take it with a grain of salt, but often can offer great insights.
Actually, when it comes to product research, what I tend to do is I go to google.com.au, and I know there's other options out there as well. And then when I type in the search, I then go to search tools and select only Australian sites.
Yes.
Because that's for me is sort of more, for starters, I'm not going to get sticker shock because I'm going to see actual prices instead of thinking, oh, that's really, really cheap, but it's actually in American dollars, not in Australian dollars, for instance.
Absolutely. And, at the end of the day, Google is a commercial entity. Often those top few items that will be presented are sponsored. So make sure you're looking at the organic stuff that's presented.
I'd say we're probably not far off doing a search and then automatically going to the bottom and getting to page 3. I think that's probably where we're all going to start doing. And of course, security is really important when it comes to implementation of technology. Why does that always have to be at the forefront of your mind as well?
I think it's such a risk. Whilst tech is getting better, cyber criminals are getting better as well. And I think the latest figure is that cyber attacks are costing us over $1 billion per year. So there's great software out there available that can protect our products. And going back to the mobile devices, for example, look at devices that schedule regular security updates. So you want at least a quarterly patch, which provides an update. So obviously Apple are very good at that, but most of the main brands will ensure that's the case.
And speaking of updates, do them. Like, how many people just go, I can't be bothered, I keep getting these pop-ups. It's like you're getting the pop-ups because you're not doing them regularly, and the software is becoming more and more stressed because it's concerned that you are not implementing these updates. And a lot of those do have security patches with each of those updates, so it's really important to keep on top of those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I highly recommend that you're on top of the latest software. Yeah.
Now, we're talking about these devices, and I'm sure there's a couple of listeners out there who are saying to themselves, well, I don't want to become addicted to yet another screen, device, piece of software, social media thing, which is going to make me less productive. What would you say in terms of utilising these things for good instead of bad?
Yeah, so I think switching off is really important with technology. You know, it's gone are the days whereby you'd leave the office at 5 and come back at 9 and not worry about work. It's, by having things like a smartphone in our pockets, they can consume our lives. So I absolutely think that we should be switching off. And, Apple's done a great job, for example, whereby they've introduced the ability that when you're driving that you can't use your phone. It's stuff like that we need to be doing because it can increase stress and fuel anxiety as well. So I think it's important being present and having tech-free time.
I think it's important that we ban phones in schools, quite frankly. I think that's something that we need to have more of a discussion about.
Absolutely. So Victoria's just rolled that out, which is fantastic news. And
in your opinion as a tech expert, are we disadvantaging an entire generation of students, or are we simply not making them the guinea pigs for our technological addictions? Yeah,
so as a child of the 90s, I think, or 80s and 90s, I think I've turned out okay, but I think we should have tech-free time at school. I couldn't agree more. I think we live in an environment whereby our kids can be bullied, and digital bullying is really, really tough on kids. So I think at school they shouldn't have phones. They should be switched on, learning, playing, absolutely.
Because they do have, it's compulsory for them to have laptops now, so the laptops are a little bit harder to use as a digital device for cyberbullying or to have Instagram up on the screen. It's a bit harder. It is possible, but it's a little bit harder, I hope. I'm talking to my 13-year-old child now as I speak. But yeah, it is. It's something we need to grapple with as an entire society. Do we stop these kids from using technology and therefore disadvantage them in a technological world? Or do we, say, unfettered access, go for it and just deal with the consequences and become more resilient to the cyberbullying and to the distractions and the addictions? But these products are not designed for us to put the phones down. They're designed for us to be on them 24/7.
Absolutely. You can look at a lot of things side by side with some of the industries that try and addict people, and they can be seen side by side. But I think we probably send mixed messages to kids, and I think you're probably accurate in that, a lot of kids need a laptop. It's compulsory at a lot of schools, but then we sit exams and we handwrite our exams. So, that's where obviously a product like Rocketbook's great in that you can continue developing a hand. I actually spoke with a teacher, and the way that they train their students was they connect a battery to the pen when they're writing exams so that it makes the pen a bit heavier. This is obviously going to be an issue with technology if we don't maintain things like pen and paper.
Yeah, interesting concept. Tell us a little bit more about how we can find out about a Rocketbook.
So jump on our website, getrocketbook.com.au, and if you've got any questions, you can obviously submit them there. We'll help you out. Otherwise, Rocketbook Australia on Facebook.
Fantastic. Look, thank you so much for coming on the program today, Carl. It's been fascinating talking about tech and implementation and the do's and the don'ts and the good, the bad and the ugly. Thank you very much for coming on Small Biz Matters. Today, if you've missed any of today's show, you can, of course, catch up via our website, smallbizmatters.com.au, where there's over 150 fantastic podcasts just like this one to listen to. Plus, there's over 80 on iTunes where you can subscribe or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for listening to Small Biz Matters with Alexi Boyd. We'll be back next week. Oh, we won't be back next week, actually, because we're having a week off, but then the following week we've got lots of great guests coming up over the next few weeks, so make sure you listen in. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next week.